It wasn't all that long ago when this happened. In fact, it still feels fresh in my mind, like it happened yesterday. Back then, I had no idea just how many terrifying stories existed about Craigslist. I thought those things were just internet rumors, urban legends people exaggerated to scare others. I figured as long as you were cautious, it was relatively safe. But looking back now, I realize I wasn't nearly as careful as I believed. This was right after a major life change. I had just moved into my new house. The move wasn't small either, it was all the way across the country. I left behind the place I grew up in, my old job, familiar streets, and every face I knew. Here, I was a stranger in an unfamiliar town. To make the move easier, I'd sold most of what I owned. Furniture, appliances, random stuff that had collected over the years. I got rid of almost everything. So, when I first arrived, the new house felt like a hollow box. Big empty rooms, echoing footsteps, and walls that seemed to stretch wider just because they had nothing inside them. I knew I had to fill the place up somehow, and furniture stores were expensive. So, like a lot of people, I turned to Craigslist. At first, it was harmless. I browsed whenever I was bored, scrolling through listings for chairs, rugs, lamps, anything that might make the house feel a little less lifeless. In fact, I'd already picked up a couple of things from sellers with no problems at all. Normal people, normal exchanges. I had no reason to think it could ever go sideways. Then one night, while scrolling through, I saw a post that immediately caught my eye, a couch. Not just any couch, but the exact kind I wanted, a gray sectional, modern and clean, the kind that would actually make the living room feel like a living room. The price was good too, just $200. Almost a good. I messaged the seller right away. His name was Brian. He replied quickly, and from his text, he came across as a relaxed, easygoing guy. Nothing about him felt off. We agreed on the price and started talking logistics. That's when the first complication came up. I only had my SUV, and there was no chance the whole sectional would fit in one trip. Brian lived a town over, which meant I'd have to make multiple drives back and forth just to get the whole thing. When I mentioned this, he offered to drop it off himself in his pickup truck. At first, I hesitated, giving my home address to some random person from Craigslist. That went against the little voice in the back of my head telling me to be careful. But Brian didn't push. He didn't come across as sketchy or aggressive. If anything, it felt like he was just being considerate. Eventually, convenience won me over, and I agreed. We settled on 5:30 the next evening. The following morning, I sent him my address and spent most of the day cleaning. I wanted the house to feel at least somewhat ready, like I wasn't just living out of boxes. As the clock ticked toward 5:30, I settled into the living room with the blinds half open, waiting. Right on time, headlights glowed down the road. A black pickup truck rolled past my house. My pulse quickened, but almost immediately, I noticed something wrong. The bed of the truck was empty. No couch. I told myself it was nothing, probably just a neighbor passing through. I let it go and turned my attention back to the TV. But just a few minutes later, the same black truck circled back. This time, it moved slower, almost crawling. As it passed, I could feel the driver's gaze on my house, maybe even through the window where I sat. My stomach tightened. Something about it didn't feel right. I shot Brian a quick text, asking if he was still on his way. After that, the truck never returned, and Brian never responded. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he sold the couch to someone else. Maybe he got busy. But when an hour passed, I tried texting again, only for the message to bounce back. That's when I realized the truth. He hadn't just ghosted me. The number didn't exist anymore. Still, I didn't panic. If anything, I felt more irritated than anything else. I'd wasted time waiting around for nothing. I told myself maybe it was just some flake who used a burner phone. It wasn't the first time someone backed out of a deal. So I moved on. I had dinner, unpacked some boxes, set up my office. By the time I crawled into bed, I was over it. I watched YouTube until my eyes got heavy and eventually drifted off. That's when it happened. I don't know what time it was when the sound woke me, but it cut straight through my sleep. Sharp and undeniable. A long, aching creak. My front door. I knew that sound instantly. It was the only squeaky door in the house, and it always bothered me. Someone had just opened it. My eyes shot open, heart pounding. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened. Slow footsteps crept across the floor downstairs. Each one echoed faintly through the empty rooms, confirming I wasn't imagining it. Someone was inside my house. Then came silence, and then a voice. It was low, flat, completely emotionless. And it was saying my name. The sound of it paralyzed me. I didn't know the voice. It wasn't anyone I'd ever met. But somehow, he knew my name. He said it again, and again. Over and over, in that same dead tone, as if he was reading it from a sheet of paper. He was standing at the bottom of the stairs. I forced myself to move, reaching slowly for my phone. My hands shook as I whispered to the 911 operator, terrified the man would hear me talking. The entire time, his voice continued, calm and steady, repeating my name like he was trying to draw me out. I couldn't take it. I crawled into my closet and stayed hidden in the dark, clutching my phone. And then silence again. The voice stopped. No footsteps. Nothing. I sat there, barely daring to breathe. Every nerve in my body stretched thin. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the flashing lights of police cars washed across my window. Relief almost knocked me over. They searched the house, but he was gone. Whoever had been in there, whoever had called my name from the stairs, had vanished. I told the officers everything. About Brian, the couch, the truck that circled my street. I was sure it had to be him. But when they checked the phone number, it was already disconnected, a burner, dead end. And even if they could trace him, there was no evidence to tie him to the break-in. Still, I know it was him. Sometimes I wonder what his original plan was. Maybe he expected me to come to his place so he'd be prepared. Maybe when I didn't, he decided to come to mine. But why didn't he come upstairs? Why didn't he open my door? Why just stand there, saying my name? The police told me he had picked the lock. After they left, I replaced it immediately. I added cameras. I couldn't move, so the only option was to make this place as secure as possible. Nothing has happened since, but sometimes, late at night, when the house settles and the wood creaks, I swear I can still hear that voice at the bottom of the stairs, calm, lifeless, whispering my name. Every once in a while, I get this itch to scroll through sites like Craigslist or eBay. It's kind of like digital thrifting. Most of the time, it's just for fun, scrolling through random junk people are trying to get rid of. But sometimes, if you're lucky, you find these little hidden treasures deals so good you can't help but jump on them. Back in 2018, I was living in a small apartment that still looked kind of empty. Bare walls, not much furniture, nothing that made it feel like home. So when I came across a Craigslist ad for a huge bin of home decor candles, picture frames, knickknacks, little things to bring a place to life, I thought, perfect. The seller's name was April. At least, that's what she went by. Over text, she came across really warm, friendly, the kind of person you almost felt you could trust just from her tone. She told me she was in the middle of moving and didn't want to risk her decorations breaking during the move, so she was basically giving them away. $20 for the whole bin. It sounded like a steal. We arranged to meet on a Thursday evening around 6 p.m. in the parking lot of a busy grocery store. That worked for me. The place was public, well lit, lots of people coming and going, exactly the kind of spot where you'd feel safe meeting a stranger from the internet. That evening, I actually left work early so I wouldn't be late. I pulled into the lot, parked, and texted April a description of my car. Since it was winter, the sky was already getting dark, so I sat there with the heater blasting, watching the crowd, waiting for her to show up. A couple minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was April. She said she was stuck at work a little later than expected, and asked if I could meet her somewhere closer to her job instead. At first, I was a little annoyed. I'd already gone out of my way to get there, but she apologized quickly and even sent over an address. I figured, whatever, it wasn't far, and it was still just a quick pickup, so I started driving. It took me maybe 15 minutes to get to the new spot, but by the time I arrived, the sun had completely set. The address led me to this half-abandoned strip mall. Almost every storefront was dark, the parking lot nearly empty. The kind of place that instantly makes you feel uneasy. I scanned the lot and spotted a single car parked off to the side, a red Toyota SUV. April had mentioned she drove a red SUV, so I assumed that had to be her. Still, I couldn't shake the discomfort. It was such a stark contrast from the original plan. Instead of a bright, busy store lot, I was now standing in this silent, empty space surrounded by shadows. I pulled into a spot a few spaces away and got out, trying to stay cautious but not paranoid. That S when I noticed I couldn't see through the SUV's windows at all. Either they were tinted or just completely dark inside. Something about that instantly put me on edge. A few seconds later, the SUV's door opened, but it wasn't April. A man stepped out. Mid-30s, dark hair, bundled in a heavy winter jacket. He gave me this casual little smile and said April was running late at work, so she had sent him to drop off the stuff instead. That alone was weird. Why wouldn't April text me directly to tell me that? Before I could even respond, he added that since I'd been inconvenienced, I could just take everything for free. Then he popped open the SUV's trunk and stepped aside, gesturing for me to come take a look. And that's when my gut really screamed at me. The whole setup felt wrong. I hadn't even seen what was inside the trunk yet, but something deep down told me I didn't want to. I forced a polite smile and told him I just wanted to call April real quick to confirm. The second I said that, his face changed. His fake smile dropped, and he just stared at me as I backed toward my car. I pulled out my phone and dialed April's number. And that's when I heard it, the muffled ring of a phone, coming from his jacket pocket. My stomach dropped. He quickly silenced the call, but the look on his face said everything. His expression turned cold, and he started walking toward me fast. I didn't wait around. I bolted for my car, jumped in, slammed the locks, and threw it in reverse. He was already just a few steps away as I sped out of that lot. The whole drive back, my hands were shaking. It hit me like a brick there was never an April. This man had been pretending to be her the entire time, luring people, probably women, into isolated spots with promises of cheap deals. Later that night, I told my sister, and she insisted I report it. So I did. But when I explained the whole thing, the police basically told me there wasn't much they could do. Technically, no crime had been committed. Pretending to be someone online and against the law by itself. But I know what that was. I know what almost happened, and I can't stop thinking about how different that night could have ended if I had walked over to that open trunk. For the past few years, my life had been the definition of routine. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. I lived in the city, worked only a few miles from my condo, and rarely had to step out of that bubble. Everything I needed, food, work, entertainment, it was all right there within arm's reach. But one week, that neat little bubble cracked. A bunch of minor problems popped up in my condo, little things that needed fixing, but enough to make the place uncomfortable. My sink was leaking, a cabinet hinge had come loose, even the door frame was giving me trouble. I'm not exactly a handy man, and calling a repair guy would have cost me a small fortune. The truth, I didn't even own a basic toolkit. That's when I figured, why not just buy one? Instead of heading to a hardware store where everything was overpriced, I jumped on Craigslist, hoping to find something second-hand but decent. After scrolling through endless junk, I stumbled across a post that looked promising. A lightly used toolkit, complete set, at a price that almost seemed too good to pass up. It wasn't flashy, but it had everything I'd ever need. I shot the seller an email, not expecting a quick reply, but within 15 minutes, he wrote back. His message was short, almost abrupt, but he gave me his address and told me I could swing by the next night. There was just one catch. The guy didn't live in the city, not even close. His address was in some little town I had never heard of, about 45 minutes out, tucked deep into the woods. I pulled it up on satellite view, and the place looked tiny, just a handful of houses swallowed by forest. Still, I figured the drive was worth it if it meant getting tools for cheap. The following evening, after work, I hopped in my car and started the trip. At first, the drive was calm, smooth roads, street lights, the normal hum of the city slowly fading behind me. But the further I went, the thinner the traffic became. By the time I hit the rural stretch, I was the only car on the road. Honestly, I tried to enjoy it. There was something peaceful about leaving the chaos of the city behind. But as the sun dipped lower and shadows stretched across the asphalt, that peace shifted into unease. By the time I reached the town, night had completely taken over. No street lights, no signs of life, just darkness pressing in from all sides. The neighborhood looked nothing like what I was used to. Most of the houses were ancient, run down, leaning like they hadn't been touched in decades. Some were completely dark, and a few looked abandoned entirely, windows boarded or broken. The woods surrounding them only made everything look more suffocating, like the forest itself was swallowing the place whole. I told myself I was just being paranoid, just a city guy out of his element. Finally, I pulled up to the address. The house looked like all the others, small, sagging, barely standing. I parked at the edge of the driveway, cut the engine, and immediately noticed something that made me uneasy. The silence, not the normal kind of quiet you get in a rural town, but something heavier. No cars in the distance, no voices, not even the faint sound of a TV or a dog barking. Just dead, suffocating stillness. I climbed out of my car and made my way up to the porch. The wood creaked under my weight as I knocked on the door. As I waited, a prickle crawled across my skin. The kind of feeling you get when someone's eyes are on you. My head kept snapping to the tree line, to the shadows between houses. Every second I expected to see someone step out. Then, the door opened. The man standing there wasn't what I'd pictured. He was average height, maybe late 30s, with long, greasy brown hair and a patchy beard. His clothes looked dirty, his expression flat. He gave me a quick wave to come inside. Against my better judgment, I stepped in. The living room was dim, almost entirely swallowed in shadow. Only a single weak lamp was on, casting just enough glow to distort the room with long, crawling shadows. Sitting on the couch was a thick black tool bag, the kit I'd come for. But what unsettled me wasn't the man or even the tools, it was the house itself. The air felt wrong, heavy, and as I glanced around, I noticed something that sent a shiver through me. Down the hallway, the back door was wide open. Not just open, it was broken. It hung crookedly off its hinges, as if someone had forced it. I didn't say anything. My brain was telling me to grab the tools, hand over the cash, and leave as fast as possible. I crouched by the bag, unzipped it, glanced inside. It was full. Everything as promised. I pulled out the cash, turned to hand it to him, and froze. He wasn't there. The spot where he had just been standing was empty. A wave of dread rolled over me. My pulse started hammering in my ears. I called out his name, my voice shaky, but the only reply was the creak of the old house settling. Except, it didn't sound random. The creaks were too deliberate, too much like footsteps. My gut screamed at me, "Get out." I started backing toward the front door, leaving the tool bag behind. My hand was inches from the knob when I froze again. In the hallway, blocking the exit, stood a different man, taller, broader. His entire face was swallowed by the shadows, but I could feel his eyes on me. He didn't say a word. He didn't move. Forcing my voice to sound casual, I stammered, "I'm just heading out to my car to grab a little more cash, if that's cool." He didn't respond. He didn't even blink. Then it came, another sound, a floorboard groaning to my right. From the kitchen, the pitch-black kitchen. I didn't think, I didn't plan, I bolted. I spun on my heel and sprinted straight for the broken back door. I crashed through it into the night, nearly twisting my ankle as I tore across the uneven yard. Behind me, heavy footsteps thundered against the wooden floors. They were chasing me. I cut around the house toward my car, my lungs burning, my hands fumbling for the keys. Just as I reached it, someone darted out from behind the vehicle. My heart nearly stopped, but instead of grabbing me, they sprinted off into the woods. I didn't wait to figure out why. I dove into my car, slammed the locks, and started the engine with shaking hands. My tires squealed as I tore down that dark road, not daring to look in the rearview mirror until I was miles away. Even then, my hands wouldn't stop trembling. To this day, I don't know exactly what their plan was. Maybe to trap me inside, maybe to rob me, or maybe something worse. All I know is there wasn't just one man in that house, there were multiple. And if I hadn't trusted that gut instinct and run when I did, I don't think I'd be here to tell you this story. If this story gave you chills, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you never miss more terrifying true stories like this one.